Last week, we talked about some of the biggest differences between struggling medical groups and high-performing organizations. We discussed long-term thinking, strategic staffing, operational intelligence, investment philosophy, and diversified revenue streams. And today, we're continuing that conversation because once organizations begin growing successfully, entirely new challenges emerge. Growth sounds exciting, but growth without infrastructure creates chaos very quickly. And high-performing organizations understand that scaling successfully requires discipline. Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jill Arena. I began my career in accounting and finance, and I have more than 30 years of experience running medical groups. I own and operate a national healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company, and I am the author of Physician Heal Thy Financial Self. In 2020, I co-founded the Physician Leadership Project, and in 2025, I released Physician's Edge, the first of its kind CME-accredited online business education for physicians. My passion is to increase financial and business literacy for physicians. Episode 185. Busy, burned out, and barely profitable? Here's what high-performing groups do differently, Part 2. Last week, we talked about some of the biggest differences between struggling medical groups and high-performing organizations. We discussed long-term thinking, strategic staffing, operational intelligence, investment philosophy, and diversified revenue streams. And today, we're continuing that conversation because once organizations begin growing successfully, entirely new challenges emerge. Growth sounds exciting, but growth without infrastructure creates chaos very quickly. And high-performing organizations understand that scaling successfully requires discipline. One of the first things strong organizations understand is that expansion should never be driven by ego. This happens more often than people realize. A group opens another location simply because competitors are expanding. A practice adds providers without proper infrastructure. Leadership becomes emotionally attached to getting bigger. But bigger is not automatically better. Larger organizations can absolutely become larger dysfunctional organizations. High-performing groups expand strategically. They ask difficult questions before growing. Is there actual market demand? Is the payer mix favorable? Can the organization recruit successfully in this new region? Will the culture scale effectively? Does leadership have the bandwidth to support expansion? Do operational systems exist to support multiple sites? Strong organizations perform significant due diligence before opening new locations. They analyze demographics, competition, referral patterns, commercial insurance penetration, labor availability, real estate costs, growth trends, and perhaps most importantly, they elevate operational readiness. Because here's something every healthcare leader eventually learns. Chaos multiplied is still chaos. If workflows are broken in one location, adding a second location rarely fixes the problem. It usually magnifies it. That's why high-performing groups standardize systems before they scale. They create repeatable workflows, clear leadership structures, operational consistency, defined processes, accountability systems. They build infrastructure intentionally. And honestly, one of the biggest differentiators in high-performing organizations is leadership development. Medicine does an extraordinary job of training clinicians, but it does not consistently train leaders. Physicians are expected to suddenly manage teams, budgets, operations, staffing conflicts, strategic planning, and financial decisions, often with almost no formal education in any of those areas. And strong organizations recognize that leadership is a learned skill, not an automatic byproduct of intelligence or clinical excellence. So they invest in leadership development intentionally. They create or participate in physician leadership programs, provide coaching, develop mentorship structures, support business education, teach communication skills, encourage emotional intelligence development. because organizations rise or fall based on leadership quality. And leadership quality affects everything: culture, retention, decision-making, conflict resolution, adaptability, and physician engagement. Strong organizations understand that physician engagement is not optional anymore. Physicians who feel disconnected from leadership often disengage emotionally from the organization itself. But when physicians understand the business, participate in strategy, and feel heard by leadership, alignment improves dramatically. And aligned organizations move faster. They communicate better, solve problems faster, retain physicians more effectively, and they navigate change more successfully. High-performing organizations also work very hard to reduce learned helplessness inside their culture. This is an important concept. In struggling organizations, people often stop believing improvement is possible. Employees become cynical. Physicians disengage. Departments operate in silos. Problems persist without resolution. Strong leaders interrupt that pattern. They create ownership cultures. They encourage problem-solving, curiosity, innovation, and collaboration. And they model accountability consistently, because culture always reflects leadership behavior eventually. You're listening to Medical Money Matters, a weekly podcast brought to you by Healthy Practices, a healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company dedicated to keeping our clients independent. If you're looking for more ways to strengthen your business skills, check out Physician's Edge, the first of its kind CME-accredited online business education for physicians. It's a mini MBA online course designed to help you master the financial side of your practice. You can find that and more about how we support practices like yours at healtheps.com. That's www.healtheps.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Now let's talk about another area where high-performing groups separate themselves dramatically: revenue cycle management. Most organizations still think about revenue cycle as purely administrative. But high-performing organizations understand that revenue cycle is operational intelligence. Your revenue cycle tells stories. It reveals workflow failures, documentation problems, staffing issues, scheduling inefficiencies, credentialing delays, technology breakdowns, and training gaps. Strong organizations review these metrics consistently. They monitor denials, coding distributions, collection rates, accounts receivable aging, charge lag, claims lag, authorization delays, and payment variance trends. And importantly, they do not ignore small problems, because tiny operational leaks become massive financial problems over time. One delayed workflow, one broken communication process, one recurring undercoding issue. Multiply that over thousands of claims and months of operations, and suddenly organizations are losing enormous amounts of money without realizing it. High-performing organizations become incredibly disciplined operationally. Not obsessive, disciplined. There's a difference. And perhaps the most important thing these organizations understand is this: culture is a competitive advantage. In healthcare today, organizations compete not only for patients, but for physicians, nurses, administrators, and staff. Healthy cultures attract talent. Unhealthy cultures repel it. Strong organizations create environments where people want to stay. That doesn't mean perfection. Every healthcare organization experiences stress, conflict, and operational challenges. But healthy cultures handle those challenges differently. They communicate transparently, address problems directly, reduce unnecessary drama, create accountability fairly, support professional growth, encourage collaboration, and importantly, they build psychological safety. This concept cannot be overstated. People innovate when they feel safe speaking honestly. Organizations improve when employees can identify operational problems without fear. Physicians engage more deeply when leadership listens respectfully. And adaptability increases dramatically when teams trust each other. This becomes especially important during periods of rapid healthcare change. Because healthcare is evolving quickly right now. Artificial intelligence, consolidation, workflow shortages, changing reimbursement models, consumer expectations, and technology disruptions. Organizations that cannot adapt operationally are going to struggle increasingly over time, and adaptability is ultimately a culture issue as much as a strategy issue. The strongest organizations build cultures capable of learning continuously. That mindset becomes incredibly powerful. Because ultimately, high-performing medical groups are not simply collections of physicians. They are ecosystems. And healthy ecosystems require intentional leadership, disciplined operations, strong communication, financial intelligence, and strategic thinking. The organizations thriving today are not necessarily the ones working the hardest. Often they are the ones thinking the clearest, the ones measuring consistently, the ones building intentionally, the ones willing to invest wisely, the ones developing leaders instead of just managing schedules. And perhaps most importantly, the ones recognizing that healthy organizations create healthier communities. Because when practices become financially stable and operationally strong, good things happen. Physician burnout decreases, staff retention improves, patient experience improves, innovation increases, communities gain access to stronger care. That's the bigger picture here. This isn't just about business, it's about sustainability. And sustainable healthcare organizations matter enormously right now. So as you leave today's episode, I want you to think about a few questions. Are you building reactively or strategically? Are your systems scalable? Are you developing leaders intentionally? Are you investing wisely? Are you creating a culture people want to stay in? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of organization are you building 5 years from now, not just surviving today? Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Medical Money Matters. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with a physician leader, administrator, or colleague who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to talk strategy and investing for the long-term health of your practice. You're worth it. Until next time. Before we wrap up, if you're listening to this and thinking, it's not just one thing, there are multiple parts of my practice that could be running better, I want you to know that you're not alone. Most physicians were never taught how to run the business side of medicine, and yet you're expected to lead complex, multi-million-dollar organizations. That's not a personal failing, it's a systems gap. At Healthy Practices, our operational and strategic consulting is designed to help you close that gap. We work alongside physicians and leadership teams to bring clarity to the business. Everything from workflow and staffing models to financial performance, growth strategy, and long-term planning. The goal is to help you move from reactive and overwhelmed to structured, intentional, and in control. For some practices, that means solving immediate operational pain points. For others, it's about stepping back and building a clear strategy for sustainable growth, profitability, and leadership development. And often, it's both. Because when your systems, your people, and your financial performance are aligned, everything gets easier. Decisions become clearer, teams function better, and the day-to-day stress starts to come down. So if you're ready to take a more intentional look at how your practice is operating and where it could go next, I'd encourage you to reach out and start the conversation. You can find more information in the show notes or at healtheps.com.